I want to thank Professor Tankersley for inviting me and you for being here. It's a beautiful spring Friday evening in Memphis, and I've got to believe there are one or two other places you could have been tonight. So I'm delighted you chose to be right here with us. So this is what an honors and scholarship banquet looks like. Cool. When invited to speak, I told Dr. Tankersley that this would be a first for at least one person in the room. You're looking at it. As mentioned in my introduction, I did graduate from the University of Miami in the half of the class that made the top half possible. So, 40 years ago, you would have been standing on my shoulders. It's kind of like the Mike Rowe of the university system, right? There's got to be somebody there. Tough job, but it's got to be done. I grew up in Charleston, West Virginia, in the heart of Appalachia, and I don't know what sort of thought that conjures up in your mind, but to this 17-year-old high school graduate, it wasn't an especially attractive place, and frankly, not the kind of place that I wanted to spend 4 more years in. I mean, the mountains, the trees, the streams it's a beautiful state. But unfortunately, you had to drive about 50 miles out of town in order to escape the stench from chemical plants, and that just wasn't kind of a problem for me. But imagine my delight and good fortune when my parents sat my younger brother and me down and told us that because they had scrimped and saved all their lives, because they valued good education, he and I could go to attend any school that we could get accepted to. And I pushed for a little clarification of that a couple of days later, and indeed learned that any, in fact, meant any school. So, I suspect this one or two of you might have done if you were in my position. Rather than applying to West Virginia University to go study something really sexy like chem engineering, which I think my parents would have liked, I applied to the University of Miami in Coral Gables, Florida, to go to the best marine science school on earth so that I could become the next Jacques Cousteau. And I want you to know that my decision was based entirely on career goals and things like beaches, babes, warm winter, booze had nothing to do with it. Anyhow, I was accepted at Miami and spent the first 9 months of my new life getting that part of the educational experience that takes place entirely outside the classroom. Most of it out of doors, in fact. Beaches, babes. So I come home at the end of my freshman year with a good suntan and a 1.75 GPA. A well-earned 1.75, I might add. And I was just telling Mr. Savetti that statistics had a lot to do with that, too. I tried real hard to flunk it twice. So anyhow, my dad sits me down. He says, "Son, do you like that school?" "Yes, sir, very much." He says, "Tell me about this 1.75. Is that truly your best effort?" "No, sir, it's not." He said, "Well, then, do you want to go back to that school?" I said, "Well, yeah, I do, very much." And then he says, "Well, then you better figure out how you're going to do it. Because I'm not particularly impressed by the 1.75, and I'm certainly not going to pay for something less than your best effort. Good luck." Gulp. What he didn't know was that I also had in my pocket right then a letter from the university saying something about academic probation and the fact that I could well get kicked out by Christmas. Kind of the opposite, I guess, of what I suppose an honors or scholarship program letter looks like. So I bet I got something you don't. Well, I did go back on my own dime, and I changed majors to something that was, a bit more compatible with my talents. I became a business major. And if my dad were alive today, the first thing I would tell him was that I really appreciate what he did. He gave me what I deserved, frankly. Fast forward 2 years from then. I'd gone back. It's working, studying hard, changed majors, working full-time, going to school full-time. My GPA is now approaching 3.0. You try taking 30 credit hours at a 175 and pulling it out of the ditch when you're cutting half your classes because I had to go to work. And oh, by the way, couldn't afford books. And that was in pre-internet days when, you either went to the school's bookstore, bought the book, or you didn't read it. And just as an aside, Professor Tankersley, I think your policy on not requiring textbooks makes all the sense in the world. And I know that it's got to be harder for you, but probably a lot better in terms of the educational experience for students. And oh, by the way, it's more efficient. So, and a lot of people might say, Bill, my goodness, you're a business author. Some of your books wind up in both corporate and university classrooms. You're shooting yourself in the foot. Well, maybe I am, but I love it. Keep it up. Anyhow, it's registration, fall semester, senior year. And how you get to that point, the funnel really narrows down. There's only certain courses that you really have to take so you can check them off your list and you can graduate. I knew what they were. I also knew that I was $800 short of what I needed for tuition. Never mind books. $800 without which this little engine that had climbed most of the way back up the hill was going to get stopped dead in its tracks within sight of the goal line. I truly didn't know what I was going to do, and I kind of stewed for about a week. And then on the morning of registration, my girlfriend of about 4 months, notice I didn't say wife or fiance, girlfriend, came to me, put $800 in cash in my hand, and said, all I ask is a ride to work because I sold my car to pay somebody's tuition. Enough about me. This presentation is about you. None of us got here entirely on our own. We've had help. We've done hard work and we continue to, but we've had help. We've gotten some gifts along the way. For some of us, that gift might be a little or even a lot extra bandwidth, intellectual horsepower. For others, it might be someone, a parent, an instructor, a professor, who at exactly the right moment served as a can opener for our brain or our heart. Or perhaps, as with my case, somebody who made a direct investment in you. But we've had help. And by virtue of those gifts, I'll submit to you that we have some obligations. First, at a minimum, we should be grateful. Where's Rachel? I heard a lot of that from you, and I just wanted to jump up and start clapping because you're so right. Keep it up. Gratitude is anything but a sign of weakness. It's anything but a sign of lack of accomplishment. And I realize that you're deep in the knowledge and resume building phase of your life, but look, there aren't many people who want to be around somebody who was born on second base and continues to act as though they hit a double. We all get help. And oh, by the way, those expressions of gratitude will do a lot more for your street cred, whether it's on Twitter or Facebook, I don't care, than any sort of boastful self-promotion. Second, it behooves us to actually use those gifts. The Bible's book of Luke suggests that to those whom much has been given, much is expected. I think that's fair. A couple thoughts on how you might do that. I mean, to get where you are today, you've had to clear a higher bar, reach for a higher standard. You've chosen to go beyond where other people stop. Get used to it. You're just getting started. To quote my friend and publisher David Cottrell in his just wonderful new book called Indispensable, he says, most people want more, but are unwilling to challenge themselves. Most people seem willing to live in the world of good enough. But good enough isn't that great, is it? As our friends at McDonald's are figuring out, and don't get me wrong, I'm not a hater. In fact, I'm both a fan, an investor in the company, and I've eaten way too many of their cheeseburgers. But they're being taught a brutal lesson by the competition that what was good enough yesterday is not cutting the mustard today. And don't feel sorry for McDonald's. They're smart people. They'll figure it out, and things will be fine. At one point during his term as U.S. Secretary of State, Henry Kissinger asked a staffer to prepare a report on something. A couple days later, the guy turns in the report. Kissinger sends it back to him with a simple one-sentence note. Is this the best you can do? You know what happens. The guy takes it back, reworks it, turns it in to Kissinger again, gets it back with the same note on it. Is this the best you can do? Same thing happens again. Reworks it, turns it in, gets the exact same question back, only this time the staffer said, yes, this is my best work. At which point, Kissinger's reply was, in his deep, gravelly voice with a thick German accent, I want you to make a permanent mental note of this. He said, gut, now I will read it. Now that I've got your best effort, you've got my attention. There's nothing wrong with best effort. As you move forward from here and the influence of your parents and your professors starts to wane a little bit, and it will, I mean, you become responsible for holding you to that higher standard. Not so much in your academic life, but in how you carry yourself as a citizen, a spouse, significant other, parent, boss, friend, inhabitant of planet Earth. In other words, there's not one but two sets of virtues going on here that are being grown. I mean, your resume virtues and your eulogy virtues, as David Brooks in the New York Times puts it. I mean, one's used primarily to get a job. The other one is how people talk about us and how we've lived our lives. So in that sense, things like honors and higher expectations and higher performance don't become irrelevant as we move through and beyond school. Rather, one's but a preparation for an extension of the other one. I would urge you to also set a higher bar in your choice of friends. Now, I'm still working on the math, but I've got to believe that if you can have one true friend in life for about every 5,000 Facebook friends, Twitter followers, and maybe every 500 LinkedIn connections, you're doing pretty good. And by the way, you remember the girl who sold her car so I could pay tuition. I married her 42 years ago. We're still married, and she's still my best friend. And thank you. I think it's fair to suggest that we be expected to share the gifts that we've been entrusted with. You know, one thing that each of us has complete control over is the taste that's left in someone's mouth immediately after we have had an engagement with them. I mean, we control that entirely. I mean, did we take time for them, to understand them, what's important to them, what their concerns, goals, aspirations, fears are, or was it about us? Did we listen to them, really listen? And there's a difference, isn't there? Or did we just tolerate their talking? Did we extend ourselves for them? Look, I mean, friendship is not a mechanical transaction, is it? It's not like we pull into a drive-through and we bark an order into a box, pull up, get to the window, and somebody hands us a bag with a new friend in it. No. Friendships, I mean, like character, they're made, they're not born. And we have to earn it, just like you had to earn your way into this room tonight. In his book, Leapfrogging, innovation expert Soren Kaplan says that when he talks about how we react to what he calls wow experiences, you know, be they a service, a product, or an experience. So he says when we have one of those wow experiences, three things happen. One, we want more of it. I mean, think about the first time you ever tasted ice cream when you were a kid. Think about the first time you interacted with an iDevice. Maybe it was an iPod. And you held this little device and you realized that I can put all my music on this thing. And I can carry it around with me and listen to it how I want, when I want. Or think about your first kiss. And I won't get into horizontal sports, but did you not want a second helping of each of those? I bet you did. Second, he says we want to understand it. Figure out, how does this work? And third, we want to tell somebody else about it, so that if for no other reason, we can get a little piece of the credit for the smile that's going to be on their face real soon. I mean, do you realize how easy it is to give people a wow experience? Moreover, don't you want to become known as that kind of person? Last week, I paid a visit to the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. And I was there for three central reasons. One is something of a student of leadership and employment matters and healthcare. I wanted to learn more about how they do what they do, because that place is just amazing. You know, and oh, by the way, they're running a place that's regularly recognized as the best hospital in America. And oh, by the way, one of the best companies to work for. Do you suppose there's a connection? Two, as a member of the board of directors of the National Foundation for Transplants, which assists Mayo transplant patients and transplant patients everywhere to raise money for their procedure, I wanted to see how well we're serving their needs. And just as a quick promotional aside, I hope nobody in this room ever needs an organ or tissue transplant. They're serious, they're expensive, but they're also life-saving. But one thing I would also hope is that if you're not already a registered organ donor, you consider becoming one. End of rant. The third reason I was there was as a patient. And in that last role, last Monday morning, my wife and I went to the clinic so that I could get a surgical procedure done. And unlike most Mayo appointments, they had apparently had a couple of difficult, patient situations, and the trains weren't running on time. And so we spent, an inordinate amount of time in a waiting room, and we're in this little room, and I'm laying in the bed and got my hospital gown on, those things that you try to tie in the back, and I'm like, someday I want to meet the person who invented those damn things. But so we're talking, and an anesthesiologist walks in, introduces himself, and he immediately jumps into something non-clinical. He's talking about basketball. I thought you might appreciate this. He says, I saw on your chart a couple of days ago when I was reviewing it that you're from Memphis. And this was during the Final Four. He says, I got to ask. He says, with Coach Cal leaving University of Memphis, going to UK, he said, if you had any particular thinking about that. And I said, well, yeah, there's two things that come to mind. One, Coach Cal's a heck of a coach and just a whale of a talent magnet. I said, number two, as for the outcome, I said, and this was sometime after the game, I suspect even at this point, it wouldn't take you too long to find a couple 100,000 people in Memphis who are still difficult to wipe that grin off their face about the outcome of the game. But he switched gears and did the clinical thing. Let's check you out and make sure you're okay for anesthesia, which I was, thank goodness. And then he says, I understand that you had some questions about what it's like being here at Mayo and the culture and stuff like that. And he says, I'm happy to try to answer your questions as best I can. And so I peppered him with questions for 20, maybe 30 minutes. And at one point I kind of half apologized and said, I didn't, I know you guys are like super busy this morning. I didn't mean to monopolize your day. And he looked up and he smiled and he said, well, first, I've got a really good team out there that's taking care of everybody else and other patients, so we're okay with that. And he says, second, you're a patient too. I've got all day for you. Wow. From a doctor in a busy clinic, I've got all day for you. Put that in a jar and sell it. So, congratulations on what you've achieved to this point. You have every right to be proud, and I hope you are. Your friends and parents are no doubt proud of not just what you're doing, but how you're doing it. I'm proud of what you're doing. And the bottom half of the class guy is more than a little bit envious of you too. Make sure you get to come back to this next year. These are kind of neat. But you know as well as I do, you're not done. And you're just getting started. I think this is the time for things like honors and high-level scholarship behaviors to get baked into your very being so that you can become all that you can be and all that you choose to be. I like your chances. Good luck. Godspeed. Thank you very much.